Hi everybody, I'm Anam Cara and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I have a fabulous interview with Danielle Searancke. Danielle is a medium and she's also owner of Spirit School. So before we get going with the video, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and be sure to like and comment and all that kind of good stuff, and be sure to check out what's in the comments, because that's where you can find all the information to get in touch with Danielle. So on with the video. Hi everybody, it's Anam Cara and I'm here with Danielle Searancke. She is a medium among many other things, and we're going to talk about it. But I just wanted to introduce her. Hi, Danielle.
Hello. Thank you for having me, Amy.
I'm so excited. You have no idea.
Oh, I am too.
I've been like super nervous about this today. I had to go and just like pot some plants for a little while to get myself grounded. So that was great. So Danielle is a medium. She's a teacher. She's a mentor. She's a business owner and leader for Spirit School, and that is in Squamish, Canada. You're a podcaster. You're a mom. You're writing a book. There's something like I think
I'm an
you're
end-of-life doula.
an end-of-life doula, which I am as well.
Yeah.
You're also like, there's something about a TV show. Maybe you don't want to talk about it, which is totally fine, but there's something like maybe like in the background with that. So you're
Yeah.
just like doing it.
I think when you list it all like that, I guess I am doing it because I'm always like just so in it. But I'm like, yeah, that is a lot. I got 2 little kids too, and a skeptical husband and a rescue dog. I take care of my parents too. So yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot.
You know what I really like about the things that I've heard from you is how you have set up really clear boundaries around everything that you do, which I think is so important. Like you're like, I'm off next week. I take a week off every month. Please don't bother me after my kids come home from school. My weekends are mine. I think that is really, really important for women to really be able to draw the line.
You know what? You're gonna make me cry because it's taken me a long time to get to a place where I can have those boundaries, and I just want to honor that privilege that I have. But it was a goal of mine that I had like 5 years ago, and I'm living it. And I've just had such a clear vision on how I want to live my life. And I'm just very anti how society says that we have to live. And I'm just so determined to find a way of being massively successful on my own terms. And I'm getting there. I'm about to move my assistant across the country. I said to my mom yesterday, I'm like, how, like, it feels like a sign of success. I can move my assistant across the country to work for me. Like, I'm just, I have to stand back sometimes because it happens so fast that I need these weeks off every month so that I can like sit in it a little bit, because I'm like, wow, like, and that's what I'll be sitting with on my next integration week is wow, like some big decisions have been made this month. And I don't think that we take enough time to like slow down to like really appreciate the moves that we're making in life. Because I think other people, maybe not as big as mine, but everyone's making moves every single month. And we just need to slow down to kind of like appreciate them a little bit. So have to weave that into my life.
Yeah, yeah. And I really like the fact that you take a week off, just to be able to reflect, get some things done, maybe in the background, right? And then you're up and running the next week, which is awesome. It's
Yeah,
great.
the first week back is chaos, admittedly. Usually the first week back, I'm like, is this week off worth it? But it really is. Like, I already have a massage booked. I'm going to Scandinave spa for a day, gonna meet like a friend for lunch. So it's like, it's when I get to kind of like, because money doesn't excite me as much as like time. And so it's like where I get to kind of like compensate myself with like time to live, right?
Yeah, yeah. Mine is I don't put a lot of value on money. For me, it's learning. I'm
Mm,
constantly I'm constantly trying to move forward in learning new things.
yeah.
And what a gift that is, because I feel like my husband is so amazingly supportive. he just doesn't know what I'm going to throw at him from week to week, so
Yeah.
it's pretty awesome. I'm very, very lucky. So I met you, Danielle, or I actually got introduced to you because you put a 5-day introductory to mediumship course. You did like a little advertisement on Instagram, and I was like,
Oh,
oh,
fun. So
I was
you're
like,
like a new spirit schooler. I
oh,
love this.
totally. So I listened. I was I was rocked really by the first video because so many of the things that you said aligned with me. And then I found your podcast. I go find your podcast, right? And you've been doing podcasts, and you're gonna think I'm like stalker, but anyway, since December of 2018.
6 years.
I lost count, but it's got to be over 200 podcasts.
Almost 300, a half a
Wow.
million downloads. I was one of the first in our space anyways. There was psychic teachers, and then I actually created my podcast because one of my mentors went born again Christian, and she left mediumship, and I was like, I'm going to pick up the torch where you left it because we need podcasts like this out there. And so I got her permission to kind of carry on the energy of her podcast, which was just like talking the real reals about mediumship, like the stuff people don't like to talk about because they're afraid of being seen as less than connected. And I'm like, no, no, no. Like there's bad readings, there's times that we doubt ourselves. And so I really started the podcast in 2018 under this kind of like fuck it mentality of I'll talk about it. Because I have
Right.
a full-time job in First Nations healthcare that I love, and I have no intention of leaving. And so I just kind of went balls to the wall and just said, I have psychic stage fright. I'm not always right. And like it was kind of like what people wanted to hear. And no one was talking about mediumship like that back then, right?
So it's the vulnerability, I think, that like really just moved me, and your humility, and you're funny, and you tell it like it is, and it's the whole, fuck it, I don't really care. And it's not for everybody, which is totally fine. I mean, I always say to people about me, I'm not everybody's cup of tea. It's fine, right? It's okay.
Yeah, I mean, I worked with race cars for 20 years, and like I worked on teams where it was just me and men, like in garages, like on the car, on the road. And then I went into First Nations healthcare. So it's like what you get is somebody who's lived a really amazing, incredible life and just hasn't changed that much. Other than having a lot more to speak about, I still feel very much like the same personality and like the same kind of quirky person I was 15 years ago. And that's one thing that people say about me that knew me from the race car industry. They're like, you haven't changed a bit. And like
Yeah,
you do different things and like you talk about very different things, but like more or less, like I just haven't changed. Um, yeah,
I love that.
that's what I'll say around that. Yeah.
So tell me about, I mean, you've you've been in contact with your spirit guide, Skylar, since you were a child, right? And then you really didn't tap into mediumship until you had a near-death experience. Is that correct?
Okay, I'll give you the timing if you want, because it's kind of an interesting timing story. But yes, I had one experience as a child with my spirit guide that was really, really profound. And I spent an entire day. He came to me in human form as a boy the same age as me, and we played together all day at the local swimming pool. Very profound experience. And that was when I was really young. A year later, my grandma died. And I shared a room with my big brother, who is much more spiritually connected than me, but unfortunately slipped into a life path of addictions. And so he still has his spiritual experiences. He just wasn't able to like serve like I am, but he still has them. And so he could see spirit as a kid. I could never see him, but I didn't want to. And he could see my grandma after she died in our room. So I had these experiences of like being afraid of spirit and like hiding under the blankets and kind of saying, like, I don't want to see you. And I really can see as I develop my mediumship how I closed off my clairvoyance. You'll hear me in class say I'm not very clairvoyant. And I do attribute that to all those years as a kid going to bed saying, I know you're here, but I don't want to see you.
Yeah.
And then, going into teenage years, I loved mediums, I would watch Sylvia Browne on TV. I would watch John Edwards on TV. I read every one of Sylvia Browne's books before I left high school. Second, I left high school, I became an international paranormal investigator because spirituality to me at 20 meant ghosts. And so I traveled the world with Vancouver Paranormal to go to like haunted locations and try to get ghosts. And my job was actually to follow the medium and like take notes of their impressions and try to validate them and research them. And I did that for years. Meanwhile, married a stranger, divorced them, like who worked in Formula One, and I was traveling with a race car team. And, I ended up moving to Squamish after being homeless for a little while, leaving my first partner and just not knowing where to go, what to do. And I ended up working for a race car team in Squamish and coming up here and met my husband. And it was actually through the birth of my first child in Canada. We get a year off maternity leave. Kind of paid in Canada.
Right.
Well, it's 18 months now. So when I had my kids, it was a year. And so I was not used to that kind of time because I had been working since I was 10, making my own money. And so I left the house at 15. I've always been independent and kind of on my own. And I actually saw a medium when my daughter was just a couple weeks old. And I had a mind-blowing reading by her, and she invited me to her class because she was like, "You're going to be a medium." And I was like, "No." Every medium has said that to me, but no, I'm not a medium. And I did go to her class, and just me and one other student showed up, and I had a really clear connection. I had no idea what happened, but I knew that this young man's name was Justin, and he had died at 18 years old. And I just said a couple things, and the mom was like, "Oh, that's my son. Like he just passed away a couple months ago." And that was the moment that I felt almost like this knowing inside of me, like this is my path. And I remember driving home after that experience, and I had just had a baby and I had to drive like 300 kilometers to this class. It was so far away. I was so devoted to it. And I remember just saying to Spirit, I can see how you have been trying to bring this path to me so many times through my life. And I see it now, and I'm never leaving this path again. And I was 31 years old, and all these memories of John Edwards and Sylvia Browne, and like going to demonstrations and pay who at 20 buys $300 readings in 2003. You know what I mean? Like I was just that kid. And so I could see how those were signs, and like, maybe there's a piece of myself who was like, maybe I was meant to pursue it back then at 14, 15, 16. Like, did I miss something? But I think that the partner I had, I'd been homeless twice by this time. Like my first half of my life was really tough. And when I met my husband, and he offered me for the first time in my life a sense of stability and safety and connection, that I was able to like finally get curious and just like flourish. And so I think the timing was actually really perfect. But I will say, I developed in the closet for many years because I was so afraid of being wrong, and I was so afraid of doing more harm than good, that it wasn't until a near death experience in 2016, carrying my second child, that, I was in hospital in critical care. I was really, really sick, and I felt like I was going, um, that I decided not to waste any more time in my life and just pursue what I love the most, which is mediumship. And that's when I kind of like came out of the closet and, started the podcast a year later, a year and a half, 2 years later. But that's when I kind of started serving more courageously and having to tell my work, because I worked in First Nations politics. You had to have a master's degree or PhD for this position. I barely got through high school, so I was not qualified, but my work spoke for itself. So I had to rely on my reputation. And I was so afraid of being seen as a psychic medium in First Nations politics and like losing the respect, only to find out that when I came out to them in 2016 saying, I got another year off, I'm going to be pursuing this, you're going to see things. My God, were they ever supportive? And they still to this day, I quit in 2020, and still to this day, that organization still reaches out to me. They still say, "It's so amazing watching your journey. We are so proud of you," because they're all First Nations and I'm First Nations, and we just want to see Indigenous people thrive, right? And survive. And they are so proud, and they were just like so welcoming. They can't afford me to come to their events that I used to plan and organize, but they come and ask me for advice, and they just continue to send me messages of that. So sorry for going on and on and on forever, but that's kind of the timeline.
Yeah, no, I love that. I really love that. So, when you started doing your mediumship, so you were saying like you don't want to see it, right? And I'm there. Like I don't want to see dead people, but I kind of do, but I don't. Like I do, but I don't. I do, but I don't. So I'm not,
Mhm.
which is fine. Um, and mediums do it in different ways, right? Like you have like John Edwards does it one way, and like you were saying, Sylvia Brown and Teresa Caputo. Everybody kind of does it their own way. How do you do it?
So I consider myself to be a clairsentient medium, which is not as sexy as a clairaudient medium. Some of my favorite mediums are clairaudient mediums. They're the ones that can hear spirit and bring through some pretty wild information. One of my friends who's a medium in Scotland, he's blind. So he can hear spirit so clearly and he can come up with street names and phone numbers and first, middle, last names of like the whole family tree because he can hear spirit so clearly. I seem to be on a life that is centered around compassion, and space holding. And that just seems to be how I serve the most through spirit. And so I experience a lot of my spirit connection, which I feel so blessed by because I get to feel them, but I can sense them and I can work through the ability of clear empathy. So, yes, people will receive evidence and validating messages, but more or less, people experience healing when they're with me in my energy. Like a lot of people stick around because of like the vibe or whatever, but they don't realize they feel better in my presence. And I've had people who are skeptical, like I work with a lot of doctors, judges, law enforcement. Like my clientele is quite um grounded and practical because I am. And so I work with a lot of these different sectors. And so I remember having a doctor that was very like skeptical come to me and they messaged me. They're like, I don't know what it was. I just felt better there. And so like when we were filming the TV show, it was interesting because I try to explain that to them because I brought my friend over from Scotland and they got to see him work too. And I said, we work very differently. And around me, because I'm so sentient and because I give off so much energy, the way that the spirit world has said it to me is an amplifier of energy. Like I amplify their energy, I amplify their love, I amplify their healing just by the way that I show up and I just give my heart away so much. When they were doing the filming TV, like they film a lot of TV shows and they're like the camera wouldn't work. The film like fucked up and we were like filming and I was talking about Archangel Michael and all of a sudden this light behind me turned blue, but it's a white light. It's not a blue light. It's not a light that changes color. And they
Wow.
were like, their faces, because it happened behind me, like dropped. And they thought it was like paranormal. And I was like, this is why I'll make bad TV because that's an angel. Like that is literally Archangel Michael. And I was sharing about a time where they intervened and saved my life. And that's the way spirit shows up for me. It's like, it's just profound. It might not transcribe to a book really well, but it's like it's an experience. And so people feel like validated because I can bring through hard information in a compassionate way, like around suicides and overdoses and untimely passings and missing people, because I can deliver and hold space in a way that is like compassionate and healing. So that's, I think, what people more or less experience with me. But again, I'm trained as an evidential mental medium. So there's always that as well. But that's more, again, like I teach you guys in the initiation, that's more not to impress other people, but to make sure that I feel connected in with the spirit world. And then whatever comes next, that helps me open. So I would say a lot of people feel like my sessions are really healing, validating, and my intention is always, because I love humanity so much, to get people excited about living again and get excited about their lives again. And that's what people more or less experience when they work with me.
Okay. So, so is it like a feeling that you get when somebody comes in? Say a spirit comes in, wants to communicate. What does it
Yeah.
look like to you?
Yeah, so I don't see them. If I do see something, it's pretty sporadic, and I usually just say it because I don't see very much. But I have a map around my body. So where you watch Teresa Caputo work, she works in the realm of symbology. So she'll be like, "There's a feather," or "There's a tattoo," and she works her clairvoyance with, that's my accent by the way.
Yes.
She works with, like, those symbols. I have a very similar capacity, but it's a feeling. So I can feel when a loved one comes in on my right, and that's my maternal side. I can feel when a spirit comes in on my left, and I know that's my paternal side. I can tell if they're kinda beside me, that they're at my same generation, and I can move up the generations, and children and animal are beneath me. Because most people who are attracted to my work from day one has been other mediums, because spirit has been training me to be a teacher my whole path. A lot of angels and guides do come through, and they come through behind me, directly behind me. So when I'm in a session, I'll be able to kind of like easily move between the different spirit communicators because I can feel them so clearly. Now, I needed to feel them because I didn't trust what I saw.
Mhm.
And so when I feel something, I believe it more. It's like it's more evidential for me. So, like, I can feel heart attacks, I can feel strokes, I can feel depression, I can feel arthritis, I can feel immobility, I can feel elation. Because of clear empathy, I can bring through emotional connections pretty clearly as well, but I feel it. So then, you know, funny enough, because my first 30 years of life were really hard. If you can't tell by the time I come in with this, I didn't feel anything. I taught myself how to not feel, to cope. So isn't that kind of interesting that as a medium, my capacity is through my emotions and through my experiences, because I've had to heal that part of myself that didn't feel safe to feel, and that's actually how I bring my medicine into the world. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So do you or have you tried to get into the different clairs?
Oh,
Like,
yeah, and they all work and they're all there. I just think all of us are all clairs. And I actually believe that we receive everything claircognizantly in the knowing. I believe that when we blend with a spirit communicator, everything is accessible to us and everything is accessible through the claircognizance, through the knowing. I think that our human does a filtration process through the clairs, through the feeling, seeing, hearing, tasting, smelling. I think that that's a secondary, almost like delayed interpretation, and depending on who we are in our life, we're going to lean into different clairs differently. Like, and I teach a lot and I teach thousands of students every year. And so I get to see a lot of different people work. And what I notice is people who are very visual, like, designers, painters, photographers, they really do lean into that clairvoyance more, right? Where it's like people who are more musical, and people who like appreciate music or compose music or play instruments, they can actually hear clear. They just lean into that faculty a little bit more because that's how they live their life.
right,
Right? I'm a very, big feeler. I always have been. The work I've done has always been really cool, and, like, with sense like, I worked with residential school survivors for 10 years. So it's like I have to learn to be in spaces with people in an emotional way, and so it makes sense that I like to show up in this emotional capacity with people because that's how I like to live my life.
right.
So I do believe that we receive everything in a knowing, and that gets built over time, and that's how we all eventually end up working, because we build our confidence, and claircognizance is connected to the solar plexus, which is connected to self-esteem and confidence. So as we become more spiritual self-esteem, like as Caroline May says, or as we become like more confident, we become more claircognizant. And that I believe to be true.
Yeah, yeah. So I feel, at least for me, I'm definitely more visual. I have, really vivid dreams, which I absolutely love. I've always said I don't go to bed to sleep. I go to bed to dream because it's a new adventure every night. I love it. But I've been trying to like kind of stretch but it kind of is what it is, right? I mean, they're gonna bring in messages. They're not gonna, I just feel like, how do I say this? Like, not that they're not going to be patient with me, but if they have a message, they're gonna do it in a way that is the easiest, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
So
I think our role is just to be more open and just like trusting how they want to bring it through and not trying to limit ourselves by identifying too much with one of them. But what I will say is like being in the clairsentience versus any of the other clairs is like this is the capacity that I get to feel like I touched heaven. And so like I feel that I get a healing every time I do a reading because I get that energy to move through me. And I think that's how come I prefer to be in that space because I leave elevated and I leave sparklier and the world responds responds to me differently when I'm in that state. Like people approach me and animals approach me. And like even yesterday after class, it was a really fun class and it energized the hell out of me. And when I go into my everyday life, like my kids didn't want to be away from me. My dog didn't want to be away from me because I am beaming. My light is so expanded. And so like I get that through the clairsentience. And that's why, you have to take the good with the bad, because when you become more sensitive to emotions, you become more sensitive to emotions. You don't get to pick just the good ones and not the bad ones, right? Like you're open to it all. So like that's kind of like there's always going to be a shadow and a light quality, but the light will always outweigh the shadow for me.
Right, right. I know that like when my light is, is out, I tend to attract anybody like who can talk. Like if I'm like in Walmart or whatever, like anybody will just come up and talk to me. And I
Yeah.
love that. I think I love that. So I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Um, so something that you talk a little bit about is, and I don't want to call it competition, but it's the comparison that
Mm.
can get caught up in. And I do it, you know, but taking your class and being able to work and partner with others and learning about their styles, it's really kind of cracked me open. Whereas before I would be like, oh, they're doing it that way, I'm not. Ooh, oh," that whole thing where instead I'm leaning in and just being excited
Yeah.
for how marvelous and how vast this skill is. Like everybody literally has their own thing going, and let's just celebrate it.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, we have 8 billion people on this planet. Like, they're not all going to think the same type of information is impressive. Like, a name might be impressive for one person, and another person could think you looked it up and
Right.
be like the least impressive. So it's like, and what does this beautiful planet teach us but diversity for sustainability? Right? Like I always look to nature to teach, because I live in a rainforest and I live in the mountain town on the ocean. I live in one of the most absolutely gorgeous places you could ever see. If you go look up Squamish, it's mind-blowing. Like they call it a Hallmark town because Hallmark comes here to film, and
Oh
like
boy.
Revenant was filmed here and Walking Tall was filmed here. Like it's just a beautiful, beautiful town. And I was walking, and I'll be teaching this in a couple weeks in the initiation, but I remember walking by this gazebo at my kid's school, and every time I walk by it, it's different because there's like 20 different types of plants and trees around it. And I remember walking by it a couple months ago, and like I noticed like one of the vines was like red, and like this really bright red. And I sat there and I looked at this beautiful cluster of diverse plants, and I was like, wow, it's kind of cool because I never noticed you before. And just before you're about to die, you're at your most brilliance. And it's like all the other plants got out of the way, so this one vine that was like getting its last few moments of sunshine and becoming more brilliant before it passed had some space to shine. And it's like every time I walk by this place, it's like I notice something else in how the plant species move out of the way to make space for others during the different cycles and seasons. And it's like we look at nature and there's like, how could you compare the beauty of nature? How could you compete? Because the world of nature doesn't compete. It honors its cycles and it honors its diversity. I look at even how, deforestation has caused so many mass wildfires in Turtle Island because all they're doing is planting evergreens or like planting cedars. And it's like the forest is so diverse, right? So having sameness is
Right.
not sustainable. It's destroying. So I think one thing that has made mediumship a little bit boring in the past 20 years, because I've been around mediumship for a long time. I've read almost every academic paper on it. I have a whole shelf of like historical books going back to the 1800s on it. I've studied a lot, but through this pressure of like age rank serial number kind of mediumship, everyone's trying to like sound the same. And then it kind of makes me feel like for who, like if for other mediums or like for people in healing. And then you can tell people are not satisfied with it either because there's like some diversity. We need some diversity, right? Everything in this planet is diverse, including us. So why would we try to create replicatability here? It
Yeah.
just doesn't make sense. So you can't compare because we're all very unique. the other thing around this I'd like to say is around comparison, because I've never compared myself to other mediums, because there's always been something in every medium I've ever witnessed that I envy or admire. Envy just being simply something that's like can expand you, like, ooh, I want a piece of that. Yes, that's something I want, right? So it's like I can look at other people really shine without questioning my own. I will say, when I was filming, working next to my Scottish friend, who's like super phenomenal, definitely some things come up around that without a doubt, but that's perfectly human. That doesn't mean anything unless I make it mean something, right? So it's just like, what do I have to sit with this? Okay, I would love to be able to get that kind of information. That's all the clarity that brought me, right? But one thing that I did do that I found was really toxic is I would compare myself to myself. So I would compare one reading to the next, right? And I would compare, like, I was able to get this here, but I wasn't able to get this here. And really honoring the teachings I have around comparing myself to other people, to comparing my sittings from one another. Because the truth is, I've done thousands of readings, and there's probably a couple dozen people out there who is like, I don't know what the big deal is, because mediumship is so inconsistent, because it's a three-way link. And because of that three-way combination, there's always going to be an inconsistency, right? Like, I show up differently every day. My sitter is going to be different every single time. Spirit is probably going to be the most consistent for you in the whole practice of mediumship, because they're always going to be there. That much you can guarantee. They're not going to let you down, right? So it's like, with that type of inconsistency, how could we expect the sessions to be consistent? There is no consistency in mediumship. It's incredibly inconsistent. And that's something that a lot of readers have to learn to accept. Can you accept that consistency? Can you accept that it might end up better if you like open it up and like be a little bit more free with it, right? When we're worried about like matching like what we've done. So I will say that that's something I've had to do. And one of the bigger teachings I've had around that, because I don't ask my clients for feedback when they pay me. If I do like a free reading or a practice reading, maybe I will take an opportunity to do that. But there's been sessions where I thought that they were like not good, only to be the sessions that I received the best feedback on. So I got that so many times that I started realizing, like, I just have like a strong inner critic that I'm letting kind of like get into the way. And like, maybe it's not up to me to judge the reading at all. Like, maybe I just lean into spirit and just say, I hope I made you proud today. Thank you for allowing me to be of service. And just trusting that everything that happened exactly how it needed to happen for all of us. So I'm kind of taking you through my own therapy sessions here, but
I
it's like,
but I totally love that.
this is how I get to it. So it's like, yeah, I still compared, but I compared myself to myself because I have unrealistic expectations of myself. And that's something I've had to accept. And as a Virgo, realize I'm not going to outgrow. It's something I'm going to have to learn just to thrive with, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think about the comparison with myself from, like you said, one session to the next. I think that is harder for me than comparing myself to any other medium. I'll have a great session, and then I put pressure on myself for this session where I'm like, oh my gosh, I hope it was as good as yesterday. And then
Hmm.
no matter what, I'm going to think it wasn't, because I've already put myself in that place.
And you're a Virgo. So
I'm a Virgo, so I get out of bed and I've already sucked. So
girl, like, you know what? I went to a Mavis Patillo retreat. I don't know if you know who Mavis Patillo is. She passed.
no.
Okay, she's a world-renowned teacher. She just passed away last August. She's a teacher who got me spirit school, actually, in the heaven side. But I went to a retreat of hers in 2016, right before I almost died. And she said, all the Virgos raise your hand in the room. And I kid you not, 60 of us, about 60% of us were Virgos. And
Wow.
maybe it's because Virgo is the sign of service. I
Yeah.
don't know. And we rule the body, like, we're very compassionate, Mother Teresa-ish, right? So, yeah, a lot of Virgos are mediums, and it's just something that keeps us humble, I think, because it keeps us working on something. That's for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. We've got a lot of work to do.
Yeah. I had to go through this whole experience of accepting, literally accepting, I will never meet my expectations. Can I accept that? Okay, then I'm going to let it go.
I like that. I'm going to end up watching this on my own and taking notes because you're saying like such wonderful things. One of the things that you talk about, I don't even know how much time we have.
It's okay. We're good. We got 20 minutes.
Okay. One of the things that you've talked about in a lot of your videos is a book, The Afterlife of Billy Finger.
It's my favorite.
And because you talked about it, I went and, listened to it. I did an audio book on it. Why is that book like so amazing for you?
I know. So my brother is a heroin addict and has been since I was 12 years old. And so in the book, The Afterlife of Billy Fingers, I know exactly how Annie Canigan feels having a brother who struggles with addictions. It's like our lives are mirrored. And my brother has always also been my gateway to spirituality in some odd ways because he was so psychic as a kid. My parents used to go see psychics. And my brother lives an impossible, he should not be alive. And he still is, and he has these incredible angelic intervention experiences, and I think I personally resonate with the book because there's very few books that I have ever found written about a life transition on the other side. The spirit world is still a mystery to me.
Mhm.
I can bring through evidence of a connection of love that once was here in this embodiment, but they've never shown me what heaven looks like. They've never shown me what we experience in that great transition, other than some people go through a little bit of a cocooning. Some people get greeted right away. I do feel I'm working on this philosophy that what we first experience when we transition is what we expect. And then something happens beyond that. So it's like there's little pieces of it, but that book, because there was so much like evidence in it, in these experiences that she had, which were very sporadic, I really felt like this is a really big clue to me on what the afterlife may be like. The other
Yeah,
book that did that for me is Dying to Be Me by Anita Morgiano, but she didn't make the full transition. Like, admittedly, when Billy first transitioned and ended up floating through space, that challenged my belief system, which I love. I love something that challenges my beliefs because it expands me. It makes me think like, ooh, is there flexibility in this belief? Is there something that new that I can add to this? And it kind of freaked me out.
it did.
Um,
It's great.
yeah, because I'm like, I hope my cat's gonna be there, and I hope that angels are there to greet me. And like just floating through space was like, ooh, that was kind of like challenging for me a little bit. And then two, I loved it because addictions runs in my family. I'm recovering as well, going back a long time, like in my teenage years. But I think that that book also shifted my entire worldview on why someone would choose to come into this life with a path of addictions. And it gave me a whole different level of compassion for people who do choose that role when they come here and how selfless it can be. And so, yeah, I mean, it just cracked me open. And maybe it was the time that I read it. It was like the perfect time because I read it the year it came out and I read it every single year. Because it just brings me some comfort. And I always read something different in it. And then one of the most profound things in it that connected me more to earth than ever before was when he said, and this too, like I see angels, I can see things with my eyes, but I see spirit as light. I see angels as light. I don't see humanoid, anything. All I see is light. And so I think light is an element, right? I think we have earth, air, fire, water, light. I think light is its own element. And I think light is all there is when we transition. And what he said in the book is nothing shines brighter from the perspectives of heaven than trees on earth. And this is where I knew we needed to be spiritual while honoring our humanity. We chose to come here. We chose to live amongst these trees. They are here to teach us about being human. And I don't think that clicked to me, even as an Indigenous woman,
Yeah.
until I heard it in the framework of light. And then I went after reading that book and I stood before a tree and I said, right outside my work, I said, Billy says that you have more light than anything else here on earth, including me. Can I feel your light? And I tell you, I had still to this day top three most profound spiritual experiences of my life receiving this tree's light. And it changed my whole life. So some books will do that for people. For some people, it was that Elkhart Tolle wine. I did not like that at all. I was like,
Yeah.
he puts me to sleep. And he's in Vancouver.
Right.
He lives down the street. I'm like, I'm sorry, but he puts me to sleep. So I think that we we just hear what we need to hear when we need to hear it, and I just think that the layers and the lessons that come through that book in particular just never end for me.
Yeah, yeah. I think that I'm going to read it again. My focus when I was reading it was more from the curious medium and how
Right.
she was getting all of this really interesting, and she had never had an experience like this before. And so that to me was really interesting. But then, like you were saying, like when he was saying, I'm in, darkness and whatever. And I was like, oh my God, that's so frightening to me,
Yeah.
And then I just kind of had to like push through. So I probably need to go back and just, you know, read it or listen to it in a different mindset, I guess. So yeah.
Yeah, I didn't have any expectations. I think originally the things that I really liked about it were even just the little ways that he brought through evidence to his sister to get validated, to build her confidence and and be helpful to her best friend who's also going through addictions. Like
Right.
that's exactly what mediumship is. It's like our light shines through our cracks. So it's like the prerequisite to mediumship is a life well lived. I struggle with addictions. My brother struggles with addictions. My dad struggles with addictions. It makes sense that that's how I serve humanity. And those are the people I typically tend to serve, is not just people who struggle, but have lost people in that way. So we typically, and spirit aligns all that for me. So yeah, it's just one of those books, but everyone has their books, right?
Oh, no, I totally appreciated it. And like I said, I mean, I went back and I purchased it and I'm gonna go back and revisit it again. So I really, really loved it.
Yeah.
So my last question is about your husband.
Mm,
And because you said that he's super supportive, but
yeah.
wasn't, or he didn't anyway. He wasn't like buying any of this.
No.
How has he changed at all? Has he evolved? How do you share things with him? Do you blow his mind with some of the stories?
He doesn't care 2 hoots about what I do. So he came to fix my toilet the other day, and I have a beautiful school. It's a world-class venue I have built, like from scratch. Okay, like it was a cement box, and I have a world-class oceanfront school. Doesn't impress the hell out of him at all. Nothing. So here's the thing about my husband. We met working on a race car team. He met a young, beautiful girl that was a marathon runner, that climbed mountains, that raced cars, that worked with race cars, cat obsessed, Coldplay obsessed. And then we have a child, and all of a sudden, all I want to do is meditate and go to witch circles. What a huge change. Not only that, but when I told him I was a medium, the first thing he said to me, "You're not going to quit your job, are you?" Because I was working in a really bougie job and they were trying to fast track me to sea level. And it was like I was set in my career there for the rest of my life. And it was like every perk you could imagine. And so he was so worried that I was going to, like, because he knows me. I'm someone who will I'll put it all on red 100 times over, just take a chance. I've been homeless twice. I've had to rebuild my life so many times. I'm not afraid of that. So, I'm still the same person. My personality is the same, but what I focus on is massively different than him. I didn't want, I developed a skin condition. I couldn't go to the beach and watch him play volleyball for hours. I couldn't be in the sun. I wanted to go to England to see castles and not go to Hawaii to be in the sand. Like I changed so much. And no, he didn't change and he didn't come with me and he didn't support me. And he supported me in the way where he stayed with me.
Yeah.
He still built a life with me, but as far as like emotional support, I've been on my own with that. As far as like good for you, validating me, I've been on my own with that. That's been kind of like my life. My parents don't necessarily do that with me either. They still see me as like the 14-year-old kind of 14-year-old that I was. And that's true for anyone in their families. So this has been a journey of true self-esteem because I've had to do it on my own. I've had to pump myself up, boost myself up, fund all of this myself, try not to pull away from the family funds, but again, pull away from the family time, which has been the biggest part. It's been a struggle with the TV show because he wants nothing to do with it. Now the kids do, and the kids get to decide. And that was like a really hard thing because I didn't feel supported in that. Um, it's tough. So what do we connect on? That's a really good question. The children. the house. We are truly, truly, truly friends. And I've had to kind of like, acceptance, you might hear me talk about that a lot. He has a lot of things that he adds to enhance my life. Just none of them are in ways that I think people would expect it to be. But I have to do that kind of like analysis and be really boundaried with it. It's like he enhances like my home life, my parenting life. He's an equal partner at home. We do not have a traditional household. I do not cook. I do not clean. So it's like, if you're not doing that, we're outsourcing that. And so he's an equal partner for me, like on the home front and on the parenting front. And I think I have it better than most couples in that regard. If he's not necessarily buying into my career, supporting my career, then I can do it without him too. And that's why I've done my whole time. I'm like, just watch me, just watch me. And I've created a huge amount of success on my own. And yeah, so that's what I say about that. I don't know if that's helpful. It's not a
Well,
romance
yeah,
story, but
it is. I mean, I think mediumship can be a lonely place, and
oh,
so I am so appreciative of Spirit School because you bring together people in a very accepting and, loving forum. And we're all just, we're all in this together.
yeah,
Where a lot of us are, we're in a silo. Like I've asked my husband, can I do a reading on you, or whatever. Do you want to, I'll talk to him, but it'll be very like abbreviated kind of a thing.
yeah,
And he just doesn't, it spooks him. And
yeah.
so, okay, I'll just go do it over here. You know what I
My
mean?
husband has very low emotional intelligence. He's very like manly. I fix cars. I build this, I do this, but he's not someone who's like, how do you feel today? He's not the person who meets my need there, but man, do I have some incredible connections with women, mostly people I've met through the collective that fill that need for me. So I just stopped kind of like expecting him to be that for me.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
then that saves me disappointment.
right. You need to know what an incredible community you have and are creating.
Thank
I
you.
mean, no
I
joke.
I agree. And I am so careful about how I curate my communities. I am myself 100% of the time because it acts as a calling card. People who are bothered by swearing, who are bothered by people who do not see themselves as gurus, find themselves out the door real quick. And that's because I show myself 100% of the time. So, what we have left over are people who also are themselves 100% of the time. You ever come to one of my retreats? Oh
Okay.
my gosh, there are men, there are women, there are like Americans, there are like, and like everyone just accepts each other like, fully. It's just it's like a freaking, like, camp for adults. It's just absolutely magical. I say this every year because I've had spirit school now 6 years, started at my kitchen table, started with a development circle of 4 in my kitchen, and then, over time, it's just grown. It's just grown and grown and grown and grown, and it's mostly because I don't advertise that much, like, I'm not great at marketing myself. A lot of the people who come are because they bring their friends, and they're like, come hang out at this place, come check out this place, like this place you can be yourself, you're not judged here. The teacher's like, not a perfectionist, and that drives some people crazy too. Some people just want the prescription, and I am not that teacher, and so that can frustrate some people too, but I'm just honest about that and people find their way. But I appreciate you saying that because I love our community. I consider everyone there my friend, like the membership, like I just love connecting with them. We meet every single Friday for like coffee, like we're doing costume and like coffee and crafting on Friday just for like 2 hours online, like because it is lonely. Entrepreneurship is lonely. Holy crap. Entrepreneurship is lonelier than mediumship because entrepreneurs are so busy, they don't have time to connect. It's like, I'm not gatekeeping. I have no time. It's like,
Right.
so, I'm on a lot. I've just found a way to make this path less lonely. And it's by focusing on creating what I wish I had had. And I think that's been the key to my success is like, I haven't bothered creating what the metrics say I should create. It's like, I create what I wish I had had, how I teach the initiation, how I hold space, how I create the membership. I'm like, this is what I needed. And so I just kind of create it.
Well, you're doing it. You're doing it, Danielle. And thank you so much for taking the time
Mhm.
to do this interview with me. And if anybody out there wants to subscribe and share and comment and all that kind of good stuff, please do. And please, I'm going to put everything in the description on how to get in touch with Danielle. And again, thank you so much, Danielle. I really, really appreciate it.
I
And
appreciate you having me.
thank you so much. And I'm going to stop the recording and have a great day, everybody. Bye.
Bye.